Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Danville School Board meeting. We appreciate everybody being here. We're going to go to item 2 immediately, which will be approval of the meeting agenda as presented. Can I need a motion, please?
I'd like to have a motion that we approve the meeting agenda as set.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of the meeting agenda as presented. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Fantastic. So let's go to item 3 on the agenda, which is presentations. We start out with board member comments, and so anyone who wants to jump in?
Happy Valentine's Day.
Good, happy Valentine's.
Yep, happy Valentine's Day.
I thought since we're at Tolliver, I don't know if you all have seen the book that's been published for our young poets and future poets. So I have chosen a reading out of here of a Tolliver student, and which is my comments for today. Hurtful words and actions exist in our world, but we can choose kindness. Like so many do, others not so much. I can choose kindness, and so can you. And so those are the fantastic words of Ruth Goodwin, who is a 4th grader. So, like I said, if y'all have not gotten this book, it's $10. It's available. Please get the book. It's wonderful to see these young artists, poets share with us. So, okay, let's move on to superintendent comments.
Well, tonight I just want to share 2 really important pieces of information, one about staff raises and one giving an update about what we're calling Anchor Plaza. And I just want to say, I know we've got a few people here, and I've received a few emails regarding staff raises, especially with our classified staff, and in particular our instructional assistants, our bus drivers, and our cooks. And I just want to say, and hopefully it'll ease your mind, that our board is completely committed to raising the pay of our staff, and we're especially in those areas where we have that greatest need. So just ease your mind with that. I've been running a lot of comparison studies to districts around us and in central Kentucky, and that need is very clear. Again, especially at some of those, as you enter into our classified position, and we'll meet those needs. One thing that we're all waiting on is the final budget from the legislators. And if you know anything about legislation, we're just a little bit over 1/3 of the way through the 60-day session. And the way that works in legislative session works this way. They may very well pass something tomorrow, or we may be in mid-April before they really take action on that. So you just never know the speed of the legislation. But whenever that does happen, we'll be ready to have a great recommendation to the board on staff pay. I will say that the budget bill, as presented by the House Bill 1, and in addition to the governor's recommendation, but the House bill is very good for education. And so I would certainly encourage everybody to reach out to the senators to support House Bill 1. If it's passed as it's been presented, I really believe we can do some really good things for kids and for adults who work with them. The second item that I want to share with the board, and I've asked to do a couple of pictures. This is Anchor Plaza. Can we get this one displayed? And so the second item I want to share is I've been in contact with John Carmen, and we have a couple of conceptual renderings to show the board this evening. We have one that's the view from the sidewalk that you see right there. This is in front of Danville High School, and you can see the marquee out front. And so we'll have this nice plaza. You'll have some benches there, and it's not a great rendition of the anchor, but you see the anchor there in the center. And then, of course, the other is an above picture, and it's Sherry to pull that one up and just kind of see what that looks like from above. It's going to be a great gathering area. I just think about things like pep rallies or just community gatherings right there at what we're calling Anchor Plaza. It may not end up being that, but it seems like it's pretty good. So I'm looking forward to more progress on these, and truly anticipate Mr. Carmen being here next month at our board meeting to discuss this project along with the softball concession stand project as well. Thank you, and that concludes my comments.
Question? On that, is that just showing us the old marquees, does that mean that's gonna be an upgrade to the marquee?
That's not part of the project.
Okay,
Marquee
okay.
continues to sit there, so.
Okay, I just didn't know, I saw it in there, I didn't know it meant that.
It's
It's
a good
getting a
idea.
facelift as well.
It's
with
a
the
good
new
idea as well.
I mean, you know, we're gonna have this new plaza.
That'd be a good
And
idea.
then we have, the marquee.
Yeah.
And it could use a nice facelift as well if we're gonna do that, so. Just throwing it out there, it's not.
Yep.
I just want to do a reminder to our folks, we had about a 12 or 13,000 pound anchor donated to us. Gosh, it's been a year and a half now. And the Alumni Association, along with the foundation, were able to raise the funds to get it here. So with COVID, it's been a really hard situation to figure out exactly where we're going to go with this. And so far, with the cooperation of Dr. Thomas and the board, this is really going to be a great thing. And it should be completed well before, I mean, we're hoping in May, so that we can actually all celebrate and dedicate the plaza, whether it's Alumni Plaza or Anchor Plaza or whatever it might be. So we look forward to this journey because it's kind of moving fast, actually, and a lot compared to a lot of things. So, but we're going to pass around the rendition for you all to take a look at. If you all would just make sure we get it back, would be great.
Not worried about anybody stealing that.
Okay. Sharon? Oh, I'm sorry, Robin. We're going to do some recognition of Tolliver folks today.
Yes,
And Robin Kelly, the principal. Thank you for hosting this, by the way.
thank you. We appreciate y'all being here. If you get any more acres donated, I volunteer Tolliver to be the recipient of the next one.
Okay.
All right, so I have some fabulous students to recognize you all tonight. We have a system called our Blue Points and our Blue Pillars that everything that we do is covered by. And these students have earned the most Blue Points out of any students in Tolliver. And we actually had a tie for first place. Pulled these numbers at the end of last week. So I'd like to recognize Cam Fisher and Austin Sack. They have earned, at the time of this, 373 Blue Points. That is remarkable. And then also, I want to recognize Miss Natalia Ray. So close, second place, 371. Okay, now, every morning when we have open assembly, we review our Blue Pillar, so I thought you all might want to hear those. So let's show these guys how this is done, okay? B.
Be prepared and be engaged.
L.
Live responsibly.
U.
Unite.
E.
Earn and give respect.
And these guys are wonderful examples of living blue. They do it every day.
Thank you so
Every day.
much.
The board members getting
Oh,
on.
yes, I'm so sorry.
We have our willing victim.
My turn. Thank you. Okay. All right. This is your award. Big thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I had one more person I was going to recognize tonight. Mrs. Pam Stennett is our bookkeeper. Pam, her Valentine trumped you all tonight, I'm sorry. But she's with her Valentine. But we still want to recognize her. Pam has been an assistant with us for 3 years and did such a remarkable job in the way that she handled her role as assistant and such a resource to other assistants. I knew that that would be a benefit to us in the office as well. And not only does she keep our books in good shape, she knows how to load the laminator. Do you know how important it is to have someone who's knowledgeable about that? She helps us with our blue store when we pass out our Blue Points rewards. She does so much more than beyond the book and touches so many things, and her influence is so powerful, way beyond the office. So I would like to recognize Ms. Pam Stennett tonight.
you make the introduction, please? We have a very
Yeah.
special guest tonight. We are so proud to have Dr. Cleveland here. And Sherry's going to introduce him, and we're going to get this program moving.
I have had the distinct pleasure of working with our guest tonight for it. We were just talking about it when he walked in the door. Because of COVID, the first time we were able to meet in person was about a year and a half after we actually met. Because we spent so much time via Zoom and via phone call that we felt like we were old friends. But when I finally got to meet him at a KASA event, I was like, hey, you realize we've never met in person, right? Like, it just felt, I don't know, it was odd because I felt like I've known him forever. But our guest tonight is Dr. Roger Cleveland. Dr. Cleveland is a professor at Eastern Kentucky University, but also through his own business called Millennium Learning Concepts, he has partnered with our district for the last probably almost 2 years, because it was right at the start of COVID that this partnership started. He has provided some implicit bias training for all of our staff. He has done an equity desk audit for our district and has partnered with our equity council we've developed a mission, a vision, some core beliefs and goals. So we felt like the next step is for him to start to develop the partnership with the board too, because the board has a place in the equity council as well. I'm sure you all know Wade is the board member representative, but I'll let Dr. Cleveland have the floor because we've given him an amount of time and we'll let him go. So I bring Dr. Roger Cleveland.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My question was stand.
Wherever you want to.
Wherever I want? Okay, how about you?
You can grab the mic if you want.
Okay, is my voice loud enough for you?
Yeah.
Okay? Or?
Yeah,
In
fine.
fact, can you all hear Dr. Cleveland okay?
Okay, great. So I get out everyone's way. First of all, thank you all for the invitation. And this is not a training or anything like this, it's more of a conversation with the board around making sure we have common language and common understanding about what we mean by equity. So what we're going to talk about is education equity, equity-mindedness, and how we can create an equity infrastructure for Danville Independent. And I always tell my students at EKU that if you're going to be a teacher and be in front of children, that you need to provide them some context before you provide content. And the more context you provide students, the better the chance they can relate to what you're trying to teach them, right? And what good teachers connect what kids don't know to what they do know. Because every child who walks into the school has a knowledge base, okay? So wherever they come from. So it's important that we give students context. I just struggle giving it to kindergarten kids. They always say if you teach kindergarten, you can teach anything because they have limited experience, they're 5 years old. So I'm going to show you a quote, and I just want you all's response to this quote. Okay, there's no right or wrong answers. It's just your interpretation of the quote. We can, wherever we choose, successfully teach all children whose schooling is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to know to do that. Whether or not we do it must finally depend on how we feel about the fact that we haven't so far. So that's what you all's thoughts about that. What is that quote saying to you?
Kids are an open book.
Kids are open book?
Kids are an open book.
Okay. Other thoughts?
That kids, you can teach them anything. I mean, it's pretty much just teach them stuff figure out how to.
Okay.
We've been knowing what to do for a long time, so when we get to do what we know.
All right. Yeah, and to your point, this quote was came from Ron Evans. He worked in the New York City Public Schools, and this quote came in 1972.
So basically, it's to put into practice what we preach.
Yep. And the other piece is, what do you think about what he says, how do we feel about the fact we have it so far? Right? What does that mean when all our children are not excelling when we know they all have the potential to? Right? Any other thoughts?
So we clearly have the ability, but we've not got there yet. And so I see the word that you have right next to it, equity. It seems a lack of equity if we have the ability and don't meet that need.
grade. So how does the Danville School Board define education equity? Don't think about the Webster Dictionary, none of that. Just when you, a word, a phrase, or whatever. When you hear the term education equity, what comes to mind?
Giving everybody the resources they need.
Giving everyone the resources they need. I can live with that one.
Everybody's on the same playing field, on a level playing field.
Okay, everyone on the same playing field? Other thoughts?
Equal expectations.
Equal expectations. Now, Elvin and I are pretending because we've had these conversations before when he was in Madison County. And I haven't come to talk to my class, so feel free to chime in anytime you like, right?
Yeah. So I like that idea of giving the child what they need so that they can have that equal access as well. So, and that may look different for each child.
Okay. So here's one. There's many definitions out there, and I encourage, we was on the verge of doing that and letting your all's district define equity, right? Education equity for yourselves, right? And so there's a number of different definitions of it, but what works for Danville, right? So what works for Danville may not work for Jefferson County. I live in Lexington. It may not work for Danville, what we have in Lexington, you know. So, one definition. Education equity is the provision of personalized resources, instruction, and academic support needed for all individuals to reach common goals. In other words, the goals and expectations are the same for all students, but the supports needed to achieve those goals depends on the student's needs. Now, if you notice that I didn't say what group of students did I didn't say special education, I didn't say African American, I didn't say white, I didn't say Asian, I didn't say Hispanic, I didn't say gender, because what we want to do is have an overall understanding of equity. Let your data decide where the students and their needs are. Because if you start plugging in individual groups and things like that, and one of you have a small percentage of no students there, right? So if I'm in Eastern Kentucky, where there's not a lot of ethnic diversity, and I say, well, equity is about reaching the needs of African American students, and there's no African American students there, that don't necessarily mean there's not other students there who need their needs met, right? So you focus on the overall focus of equity and meet individual students' needs, right, wherever they are. Let your data say where specific students are struggling, right? When that aggregates up into a group, you say, why aren't we serving girls in math or whatever? Well, that makes sense? Okay. So we want a general definition and then find out where the gaps are and working with different groups of students. That every child in Danville has different needs, okay? And we need to address all their needs. So here's a way I can kind of explain it in a very current way, okay? Here's one way. You all remember this about a year and a half ago, right? Equity isn't handing a kid a laptop. It's knowing the systemic conditions that led to the lack of the laptop and working to mitigate them. So when the pandemic came, you all did the same thing we did in Fayette County. We gave kids devices, they didn't have Wi-Fi, we gave them hotspots, things like that, which is great. But some students probably had 3 laptops at home and didn't need it, right? Some students needed a device, but then we gave them devices, some students didn't have Wi-Fi. So we gave them hotspots, right? But we also know that when we went from face-to-face to virtual, that some children did not have people at home to support them, even when they were attentive. Or some was like, instead of getting on the device, they was on Xbox. That's why I wasn't there to say, you need to get back on your device and focus on the teacher. So even though we give students everything they need, there are some systemic things that is out of control of the district. And that's why we have to partner with the community, right? Because we can't fix every single thing. We can't control that mom had to go to Kroger to work while we was teaching a second grader. That we cannot control. But we can partner with community organizations to make sure we can do whatever it takes to support children. Here's another way to explain it. Imagine all of us, everyone in this room, is in the ocean. We're all in the ocean. And we're in the midst of a storm. And the storm is made up of COVID-19, okay, social injustices, economic strain, and trauma. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. That's the storm. And we're all in the ocean together. And even though we're all in the ocean together, we are situated differently. What do I mean by that? Well, we're all in the storm together, we're in the ocean together, but we're all in a different situation. In other words, you're on an ocean liner out in the ocean. So you're feeling the storm, but not as much as Elmer. I mean, because Elmer's in a yacht, which is much smaller than the ocean liner. Hell, he's feeling a little bit more than you, right? Poor Wayne, he's in a rowboat. So he's really feeling the storm, right? He's really feeling it. Some of us are in a life raft. And myself, I'm on a life preserver. So even though we're all in the same storm, we're situated differently. And when our kids come to school in Danville, they're all in the same school system, but they're situated differently. And we can't use universal strategies to meet different needs of children in the district. That makes sense? So think about equity that way. Some things that we do at Toller may not work at Halton, and vice versa. Some things we do at the middle school doesn't necessarily work at the high school. But there are some things that every child needs, and that's high academic expectations. So we can support them where they are. If you have a child that's in advanced placement, if you have a child that's in gifted, and those children are not challenged, that's an inequity. We're not addressing their needs, right? So think about equity. Even though we have all our children are here, but they come to us in different places, you know, in different situations. So as a district, we can't just give a blanket strategy to meet all the needs of all students. They're different places. All right, I think I'll beat the horse to death. Make education equity quantifiable, data-informed, educational opportunity rather than confusing and controversial social issue. Let's be clear. Education equity is meeting the individual needs of students, regardless of their background, their ethnicity, their gender, whatever it is. It is nothing else but supporting children. That's what education equity is. It's nothing else. Sometimes we muddy the water to make it appear deep. This is not deep. Every child who walks into Danville Independent Schools, okay, we should be addressing their individual student needs. That's all we mean by education equity. That's it, nothing else. Equity-mindedness, without going through all that, is really just creating a culture where everyone who works in our schools understands their role in meeting the needs of children. It's having the right mindset that we support children in our schools, in this case, in Danville Independent Schools. It's just having the right mindset and doing that. And every now and then, we need to reassess what we're doing to address the needs of students. And I know we're trying to come out of this pandemic, and we're moving out of this. This is an opportunity to reset, reimagine, okay? You know, what's going on, right? To address students' needs. This is an opportunity. Not just to recover, but reset and reimagine. Because what we found out is that with the pandemic, there's always a great example where students and families had different needs. And the pandemic, at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the pandemic, it hit some families different than it hit others, right? So I worked at a university. I teach online all the time. So when the pandemic hit, if I wanted to stay home, I could stay home. You know, didn't really change much. Right? Some people, well, you had a choice. You had to go to work. You know, when you work, right? And so just being, having a mindset to understand that we need to address students' needs as much as possible. All right, another quote for you. You ready? Put you to work today, boy. All right. I always tell teachers that if you're teaching in the K-12 system, and at 3:30, if kids are running to the bus turning cartwheels and you're dragging out your classroom, you did too much talking that day. Because in the act of teaching, you should be learning. And in the act of learning, they should be teaching. If I'm talking all the time, how do I know what they know? Right? So they should be dragging out like Cleveland War is out today. The little third grade should be saying, "Look, I won't go back to school. That teacher moved. I ain't wears me out." Exactly. So we have to think about that. Equity is the process. Equality is the outcome. Well, y'all can tweet that one. That's pretty nice. What does that mean? What do I mean by that? Equity is the process. Equality is the outcome. Equity is the process. Is the equality is the outcome. And I always tell my students at EDKU, the product is only good as the process. So if I give you an assignment for a term paper at the end of the semester, and you know it's due late April, if you start mid-April, I gotta know what kind of product it's gonna be. But if you start in mid-February and put in the work and the research, I have a pretty good chance of that product's gonna be. The process, the product is only good as the process. What do I mean by that? Equity is the process, equality is the outcome. What's your thoughts?
It's basically, to me, it's saying, what we have, if we have basically met them where they are, or met their needs in the process, then the outcome should be exactly what we want it to be. I mean, there should be a successful outcome. If we have indeed met them where they are, gave them what they need, and the outcome is they have been able to leave us and go forward.
Okay, other thoughts?
Well, it goes back to what this district's motto is, success for all. We're making sure there is a success for all. We're working on it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
A lot of times people get equity and equality, they get it confused because they think it is the very same process in and of itself. And for whatever reason, I value the process, but I think a lot of times people just leave the process out. They want to go ahead and get to the outcome. And if you do that without the process, there's no way that you can get to equality because you haven't met those individual student needs.
Okay. Let's say these two students right here. I don't know them. These two students right here, they both start preschool in Danville Independent. And she receives an equal education, and she receives an equitable education. Meaning that an equitable education, she received what she needed from the time she was 4 years old, all the way until she graduated from Danville High School. She received some things here and there, it was hit or miss. She didn't always get what she needed, okay? Now they both will graduate from Danville High School. But if she got what she needed after 13 years, there's a good chance she'll be more prepared than this student, and it has nothing to do with intellectual ability. It's that she got what she needed the entire time. It was hit or miss for her. So in other words, she received a schooling and she was educated. Okay? So we want to make sure that students get what they need. So schooling is acquiring knowledge for 13 years, right? Education is acquiring knowledge for 13 years and be able to apply that knowledge once you leave them. There's a distinct difference. There's a distinct difference between knowledge and wisdom. Right? Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that you don't put tomatoes in fruit salad. Okay? So we don't want to just put stuff in the kids. We want to pull that out of kids, right? So they can demonstrate their potential and their ability. So we don't want kids to just go through an equal education. We want them to go through an equitable education so they'll both have equal opportunities. That's why I don't talk about the achievement gap. I talk about the opportunity gap. Because if they don't come out prepared, okay, equally, one's gonna have more opportunities than others. But they both have to have skin in the game in their process. So MAP tests, K-Prep, all those are the product. What we do for year in and year out is the process. And really, that's really important because, you know, K-Prep is a 10-day snapshot of what happened in school. They don't tell everything what happened in school because she could come into the 4th grade reading on the 2nd grade level. And you took her from the 2nd grade level almost to reading on grade level, which is almost 2 years growth. But it may not always capture that because she wasn't proficient in 4th grade reading. Right? So the process is critical if you want that product. All right? Creating this is really strictly for the board right here. I want you all to think about this a little bit. Creating an equity-minded culture. And there's a couple of things I want you to do. One is that we have to have common language. So everyone on the board needs to, when we talk about education, we're all on the same page. And so if someone, a parent or a community person asks you about education equity, it don't have to be verbatim, but you all are saying the same thing, right? Common language. Because you know what's going to happen if you don't say something, right? It's like an opportunity to go, gotcha, right? So that we have common language, what we mean by equity. Identify champions in the district and the community who's all about meeting the needs of all the children in Danville. Okay? So we have to have common values. Common language, common values. Common messaging. Someone stops you at Walmart, Kroger, whatever, and we have a focus on education equity, focus on children, then we're all saying the same thing. Like I said, it don't have to be verbatim, but we're kind of on the same page when we meet. So common messaging. Courageous conversations. Right? We have to be comfortable about being uncomfortable sometimes. Right? You know, heavy is the head that wears the crown. You all aboard, so at the end of the day, you and the superintendent are the leaders of the district. So have those courageous conversations. You're not going to have to agree with everything, we know that, right? As long as the focus is on children. As long as the focus is on children. And then common practices. And you all's most common practice is policy, right? Policy. Well, either the superintendent, assistant superintendents, principals, teachers, and everybody else to the practice. But you want to make sure you have a policy that anchors the work. Right? That anchors the work. So, key understanding about equity. Make sure we're all on the same page. Equity and equality are not the same. If you have equity, students have skin in the game, hopefully they'll have the equality. They have equal opportunities when they leave the district. Equity in schools is about access, fairness, addressing individual and systemic needs. We didn't single out any particular group of students. It's all students. If this district is all white, you need to have equity. If this district is all American, equity. All Hispanic, whatever. It's about children. It's about children. Okay, that's what we're talking about. It's about children. You do not sacrifice excellence to achieve equity. In other words, my two students again, this time she's struggling, you're the high performing one. We don't hold her down until she catches up. Right? That's not the process. We figure out what she needs. Okay? We figure out what she needs and accelerate that. And we continue to challenge her whether she's in gifted, honors, AP, whatever it is. Because if in that way, we don't challenge her. So that's what we mean by sacrificing. We don't sacrifice excellence to reach equity. All right. So, I'm not in construction. All right. I just play one on TV. But I do know this. When you're building a house, you have to have a footer. And what's after the footer? The foundation, right? And all the equity work you do in the district, the foundation is a good, strong equity policy. Okay? The foundation. That will anchor all the work that you do. So something to consider is creating an equity infrastructure. And those are made up of about 4 things, you all. An equity system, which you all pretty much already done that, right? Now, it was hodgepodge because of the pandemic. I never saw Sherry and the principals and teachers other than virtual. And so we got a lot of work done, even though we had to go virtually. You know, death by Zoom. But, you know, we got it done though. Equity professional learning, development, an equity policy, an equity plan. That's kind of the infrastructure, right? To get the work done. Now, which one would you do first? In order, which one would you do first? If you're trying to create this infrastructure.
I would do assessment.
Who said that? Exactly. That's what we do with children, right? They come in our schools, we assess for readiness, right? Because if you assess for readiness, you teach way up here and the kids are not there, they're going to be frustrated. If you teach down here and they're up here, they're going to be bored. That's when they reach for their phones. They disengage, like this is boring, right? So we have to assess where children are, and we also have to assess where our district is as it relates to equity. All right, so you're correct. What would you do next one? That was it's kind of tricky though. Maybe the egg and the chicken. But I'm not gonna say where. But.
Policy.
Huh?
Policy.
Somebody says policy. Anybody say anything else? You got a policy?
I'm gonna say plan.
Okay. You probably could do either or. I usually do the plan first, but you could do the policy also. It's not going to kill you to do one or the other first. But you don't want to jump into professional development. Well, your plan in place, right? And so why do you think the policy is so important for these two to take place?
That's the criteria.
Okay, it's a criteria. So if we want to create an equity infrastructure to make sure we meet the needs of children in our district, you know, the superintendent could say, well, principals, I wish y'all would do some of this equity work, right? That's just a hope, right? And hope's not a strategy, right? But if you says policy says what? Shall, must, right? You're going to do this. That's the difference. And also, when you create a policy, what's the best way? Let's take Bay Middle School. Let's say there's something going on great instructionally at Bay Middle School, right? And we're trying to figure out how do we formalize the strategy that like 10 or 12 teachers are doing and we know it's impacting children. How do you formalize that? You put it in what? Policy. And so everybody else is not doing it. We're going to teach you how to do it. We're going to provide you resources to do it, and then we're going to hold you accountable. That's how you formalize a really good strategy. Just put it in policy. You can do it at the council level, school level, or you can do it at the board level. But the policy anchors the work. But we cannot ask administrators, teachers, classified staff, or whoever to do all this while providing training and support. Right? That would be unfair to our professionals. We know, as Elmer was talking about classified staff, anybody that's working with children, I consider them teachers. They may not be certified, but they're teachers. The bus drivers are critical. They're our first psychologists when the kids get on the bus, right? Those are our first psychologists, right? Yeah. The folks who work in the cafeteria, building relationships when they walk in. And if we know that we make sure that our bus drivers understand how important this is, our custodians and our folks in the caf, then when they create those connections with the children, it's only going to make teachers' lives much better. Because they're going to arrive in the classroom in a decent mood because they had some good personal positive engagement with the adults who already got in the classroom. And this is going to make the principal's life much easier because they're not going to see them out of the classroom. Right? Now, does that happen like that every day? No. Realistic. But so everybody, this is just not for certified staff. This is for everyone to understand this. You just present it to people in a different way because 10 slides ago, everybody's situated differently in that storm, right? So they're just situated differently, so you present it in a way where they understand. All right, thoughts about that? I've been talking a lot. I'm going against my word. My students are not saying it. What do you think about this? Let's pause for a second, and I'll wrap it up.
I think there's a lot of things that have been set in one's life, that you do things a certain way. My mother read the ending of the book before she read the beginning. I don't know why. She said, I wanted to know how the book was going to, the outcome of the characters, so if they die, it's okay. I looked at her and I said, but you don't develop, while you're reading that novel, any kind of a relationship with those characters. So you're just sort of spinning yourself through. So educators, especially our folks in Frankfurt, they want the ending, but they're not always willing to give us the beginning so that we can work through these processes and know that it's take time. So that's where I see that we have to do a complete mindset. And also we need to believe it's not a racial issue, because it's for all students. It's something that we offer to every child on an equal basis and expectations. So I think sometimes people get turned off when you start talking about equity because they really don't understand what it is. And so we're fortunate to have you here and others that have been involved in our staff. But we have a good understanding now and getting better, but like you said, we still don't know the outcome.
Yeah,
And that's what we're working toward.
I think you're right, just having a true understanding of what we mean by education equity, and not conflate it with other things. It doesn't necessarily make the only issue is concerned is when a group of kids bubble up who are struggling, and it is a particular group, then you have to reassess and ask what's going on with this particular group, whether it's girls or boys or special education, whatever it is. Then you start asking yourself those questions like, what are we doing with our students who are in special education? Are we implementing the IEP with fidelity? Are we doing this? Are we providing accommodation? Whatever it is, that's equity. Right? You know.
Dr. Cleveland, you'll take this presentation down to Franklin. Give to the legislative.
I trying to get me caught up in it.
Yes, I am. I'm putting the fire to your feet. They need to fire to their feet.
I used to work there. I used to work at KD. So, but I go wherever. I'm gonna speak the truth, man. I didn't say everybody's gonna like it. My issue is whether it's Paducah, Pikeville, Cumberland, or Covington. You meet the individual needs of children.
True.
That's what we're talking about. Now, you can call it what I said. Some people will muddy the water to make it seem deep, but that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about anything else but addressing children's needs.
You said something earlier that really hit me, and that was when you was talking about equity mindedness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is crucial. I mean, because I think that's where if we're not there, then I just think, I go back to that when we was talking about policies, because policy says shall and will. And when you start looking at equity mindedness, and that's like, and it goes back to the professional learning. I mean, if we don't go back and train our people and give them what they need to have that mindset, so that we can move forward and be able to, assess use equity assessment to really start to develop our plan and then move us forward, for our infrastructure and our PD piece. But until we get everybody on board in the same mindset with the same common language and the common messaging, to have 3/4 of us do it and then that quarter not do it, I mean, somebody is missing out, and that's not right. That ain't about fair enough, but that's just not right. And I just think that as a board, I think we have to look at that, and when we start to look at our policies, that we make sure that we as a district, we'll be able to stand flat-footed on this is what we want. and this is what will or shall happen, you know, within the district. And if you're not willing to, you know, sail on our ship, then, I mean, maybe you shouldn't be on the ship. But I'm just saying, it's time to, rubber meets the road. I mean, either we're going to have equity for all of our kids, and we're going to have people in place that believe in that process, or not. I mean, that's way simple speaking, not to the board. I'm just saying, I just think that's a clear direction, and I hear what you're saying, and it resonated really deeply with me.
And wait, one thing I didn't share when I did the analogy of we're all in the ocean and we're in the midst of the storm, and I said Mr. Pennington's in the ocean liner. The assumption is just because he's in the ocean liner and other folks are in smaller boats, that he's okay. But we don't know there's a leak in the ocean liner. We don't know there's some other things not working in the ocean liner. We just assume, so what I'm saying is that sometimes we'll have affluent kids in our school district, and just because they're affluent, we'll assume that they're okay. So trauma during the pandemic can impact kids in different ways. Just because you're rich and have money don't mean trauma. I mean, the pandemic affects you in different ways. Everybody experienced that. Isolation and all those different things, right? It just hit people in different ways. And so I'm blessed to get to go around the country and have these conversations with districts. And what I find a lot of times is that it is not as much as the skill set of teaching these two, it's more of the mindset. It's not a skill, it's a will. All right? So, was that the thing you were digging, Sherry? I'm out of time. That was an alarm?
No.
To get off the stage? Oh, okay.
It was somebody's phone.
Oh, okay. I was just saying, you know, you already get the divorce
I'm not ever gonna
working
kick
on
you,
it.
I'm not ever gonna kick you off stage.
Well, Elmer may, I don't know. This is resource, so I'm not gonna go through all this. It's just some things to consider when you're developing, if you decide to go this route, develop a policy, whatever. But some things that you gotta get some partnerships, people in the community, right? But we also gotta explain, like you just said, board chair, we got to explain what we mean by education equity, right? Especially in the climate that we're in. That's the reality of it is. We got to be committed to it. Those kinds of things. So, next steps. That's rhetorical. You don't say that now. I just threw all this on you all. But to create that infrastructure where we create a culture for our children in Danville. We kind of did the assessment of being revisited. It's been almost 2 years, I guess, here. Revisit, and I may not be in much detail, but then create this plan. And you don't have two plans. You may have an equity plan and a strategic plan or a district plan. So you want to have a plan, so a community member says, what are you all doing about meeting the needs of students? He's like, here's our equity plan. But all those strategies and equity plan needs to be embedded into your larger plan, so people are not going off two plans, right? But if everybody wants to know, here it is. We can pull it out and show you. That makes sense? So that's the kind of work we need you to do. So, we have any teachers in? Any teachers? Okay. I'm just making sure, because anytime I'm in front of teachers, I got to tell them this, okay? It's a hard enough job in general, being a classroom teacher, much less in a pandemic, right? So, educators, regardless of what your role is, you work in a school, you're an educator to me. A student asked me a while back and said, well, Dr. Cleveland, why did you become an educator? And I said, well, I could become a lawyer and made $100,000. But I became an educator and made 100,000 lawyers. That's the kind of impact educators have, regardless of your role in dealing with children. And it's even tougher when you are doing it during a pandemic. You think the pivot educators have to do in 2020, teaching face-to-face, the next day you're online. Nobody had teachers to do that. Right? Right? We got a new appreciation for them, I hope. You know. So, all this conversation, one of the things that we do is we check for understanding. Never walk out of a classroom, tell our teachers, never walk out of a classroom without checking for understanding. What do the kids get out of this, right? You know. So, because you don't want to ask that question. When the kid comes home parent says, what y'all do at school? And the proverbial word is what? Nothing. You was there 7 hours, you didn't do anything? Well, you know they did. So we always check for understanding, so we check that, and we reinforce some of the things we were teaching them, that they go and tell their mom, dad, uncle, aunt, granny, whoever, that they dad did something. So I'm just checking for understanding. So based on our conversation, I need a couple of you all to share, what did you learn?
I learned that we need to hold each other accountable so that we make sure that this happens and there's
Accountability. And I'm glad you said that, because one piece I left out, the infrastructure, is an equity scorecard. So when you develop an equity plan, you pull 4 of those major big rocks out of that plan, and you create a scorecard so everybody can see transparency. If we say we're going to do these things, 4 things, they're tied to these strategies, and you go on the website and see where we are and what we're doing, that's accountability. So I'm glad you reminded me of that. Someone else, I learned that.
I learned that there's a difference between schooling and education.
Yeah. You can gain a lot of knowledge, but you can't apply it. Anyone else? I'll move on.
When I was a kid, it's based on, we had a favorite word called KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, clarity.
Yeah. Like I said, I can use some big words y'all want them, I paid for them a long time ago. We have to do all that. I realize, anybody have an epiphany or aha moment like, wow, I didn't think about that until we had that conversation? Anybody have an epiphany or I realized that?
just you mentioning that there could be a hole in the bigger boat.
Yeah,
Don't assume they know, make sure they know.
exactly. And each and every child. Don't assume because they live on that side of the table that they good. Each and every child. I'm from a small town, I know how it works. How it works. All right, I was pleased then. What are you pleased about?
Turned out better than expected.
Say it again.
Turned out better than expected.
Oh, okay. What did Sherry tell you? What do y'all think I was going to do? Bore them to death, right?
No comment.
Okay.
I was pleased that, that we're having these conversations. I'm pleased that, as a district, as a board, that, these are conversations that we're having, because, like you said, it's to reach out to kids. And so I'm pleased that we're having these conversations.
Anyone?
Well, I found out that I understand that I need to understand.
Okay.
Comfortable being like
And I was not aware of any terminology or anything we talked about you were not aware of. And this has nothing to do with the presentation, but when I told, we had to cancel the lesson, right, because of weather. And when Sherry reached out to me, she said, can we do it next time, February 14th? I said, sure, no problem. I was not aware that was Valentine's Day. So when I go home, Sherry.
Do you need insurance?
I may. The last thing I'm going to leave with you all is this. To transform a culture of a district takes a lot of work, right? So, have many of you all been on the cruise? You been on the cruise? You been on the cruise? Typically, I was on my first one, like DC before COVID. And so, when you go on a cruise, you either go to Orlando, Tampa, Galveston, some of mine or whatever. And the ship goes out. The ship, just depending on something. This huge ocean liner goes out, right? And you start stopping in different places. Cozumel, Cancun, places like that. And then after about the 4th or 5th day, it's time to turn the ocean liner around. Well, what turns the ocean liner around is called a rudder. But when I took the tour with the captain, he was telling me about the rudder. But the water is so powerful, the ocean, it's hard to turn the ship around on the rudder. So what engineers did, they put a smaller rudder on the big rudder to provide leverage to turn the ship around, which is called a trim tab. And so it's actually the smaller rudder that provides the leverage, the power to turn the ship around. So you only need a small group of trim tappers, 5 of you all, to provide leverage to turn the district in the direction you want to go. Because everybody is not going to be on board with you. Most will, but everybody won't. You water the flowers, not the rocks. So don't think that everybody has to be with you. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to do is right for children. Pupils, not politics. I'll say it again. Pupils, not politics, right? Just the 5 of you all can start doing it. And he'll keep you on the straight and narrow. All right. I appreciate you all's time. If I can be of any help or anything, let me know. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
We won't do it on Valentine's Day again.
I'll be all right. Well, and we appreciate you being here, Dr. Cleveland. And it clarified a lot for me, and I'm sure with the rest of the board, and it's time to go to work. So, okay, let's go to item number 4. Well, let's go to personnel notifications. If you all have any questions or comments, please refer those to the superintendent. And then let's move to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second for the approval of the January 24th, 2022 meeting minutes as presented. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, up next we are going to go to reports. And I understand our folks are here from Frisky. So if you all want to introduce yourselves and then let us know what's going on.
Hey, so my name's Mary Beth. I'm not sure if you all remember Maggie Myers, but I'm attempting to fill in her footsteps. I'm the director of youth services, so I do 6th through 12th grade. And he pretty much hit the nail on the head of everything that we do. We meet the students exactly where they are. It's different for every single student and every single family. But me and Jenny, she is,
Yes. Hi, I'm Jenny Clark. I am not tall enough for that microphone. So, I'm Jenny Clark. I'm the coordinator for the district Standing First Family Resource Center. And like Mary Beth said, Dr. Cleveland definitely hit the nail on the head. Right now, we're in a continuation program here. So, we have to write a program plan. And since she and I are both relatively green in this aspect of life, we are developing our plan on our own. So we went off of our previous coordinator's plans. Obviously, we're separate entities, but we have a paper that needs to get signed, and we have provided the plans. If you guys don't have those, we can have an extra.
I sent them, it's a book, obviously, so I did it on a reprint.
There's no page for them.
But I think you have sent it out, so.
Yeah,
This
we each have gotten it.
This is basically just saying that you all want us here and that you'll provide us with the access that we need in order for us to do our job.
I'd like to develop a little bit more understanding too. Our organization basically has different action components, and we have to develop those. So mine include like family literacy, health services referrals. We have to learn about the child care centers around town. Actively refer to those, make sure that they are accredited. Before we refer families to those things, we aid in paperwork, all those things. And so when that kind of thing happens, it gets the ball rolling for families if they've found a new job or if they needed to move someplace else and they're further away from their original child care center, anything like that. It also helps us find out about younger siblings. So right now, my office is working a lot with Family Handbook and the preschool program to find future admirals is basically what we're kind of tagging them as, just kind of beating the bushes trying to get them over at Hoxit. I see some wonderful people from Hoxit here today. But trying to get those families into the district to feel comfortable with us before we're like, hey, we're going to take your kid to preschool, or hey, we're going to take your kid to kindergarten. But we want to prepare them before that. So there are a couple of pieces of our plan that go into that with the school program for that kind of thing. But she also has different components.
Yeah, I have 5 different components. Substance abuse and education, career exploration and deviation, again, mental health and services, we do a lot, but she focuses more on the family and the child, where I focus more, when it gets 6th through 12th grade, I focus more on the child and then developing them to be more independent. I still work with families a lot, but not nearly as much as Jenny does.
I get to pass them. Hopefully off well. Yes. Are there any questions that you all have for our program plans?
No, I read your all's report. I think what's absolutely amazing is that you all put in what you remember that you do. There are things you guys do that just kind of like an everyday occurrence, and sometimes it's outside of that envelope that you're trying to fit yourself in. I mean, I've been to lots of different programs, and you all do absolutely amazing work, and it's vital to this school district and our kids and the parents. So I do want to thank you all, and I do see us approving all this and getting it taken care of so you all can get the report submitted.
Okay, thank you for your support.
Absolutely. I just have one question.
Yeah.
The process to refer a family or a kid, I mean, I guess everyone is really clear with how that works.
It depends on the referral. So if we're doing like a health services referral, primarily on the elementary school end, that's usually things like vision screenings, dental screenings, that kind of thing. So anybody can tell us about it. So we get emails or messages from teachers, from staff, from admin, like, hey, this kid doesn't have their vision screening in yet, can you help with that? And so we set something up. We actually have an eye doctor here in town that will actually see the student for free. It does take some convincing sometimes for the parents to trust us enough to get the kids there and back, which is fine. We do use the district van sometimes to transport and get a parent to sign off on getting the kid there. But so far this year, we've gotten some kids some glasses and gotten them taken care of on that aspect, and it's been really rewarding. I had huge glasses when I was a kid, so it's really fun for me to see little kids with glasses. I don't know, like that. But I think that's also part of it too. But when it comes to the mental health portion, it does take a little more time. We have to really assess any of the background knowledge that we know. So that's when she and I work together a lot too, because we do have families that span all across the district. I myself have 3 kids in 3 different schools, so we all work together to kind of make sure we have enough information before we reach out to a parent. We also work a lot with our counselors, a ton, and they're a huge asset to us too. So.
I just
yeah,
really,
that's a good question.
I just said it because, I asked the question just to make sure, because sometimes, I know how important family service centers are in our schools and within the district, and sometimes I just don't want to make sure that the process doesn't make families want to, I'll be a part of it, because they think, they're just digging in my life, or they want to get in my business, and it's really not about it,
yes.
You know what I'm saying? And I just want
yeah.
them to know how important it is, and the assistance that they can get,
Yes.
and it's no ding to get it.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that the process is not so difficult that, that
Right.
they don't want to be a part of it.
And we do, I will say this, so I started in July 2020, so everything was virtual, everything was very, I didn't really know what I was getting into, and so everything kind of changed, but that kind of helped us because, like we were talking about earlier, we went out and we did the hotspot gathering and passing out and logging for Mr. Gover, and we did a lot of troubleshooting on Chromebooks within the homes, and we weren't necessarily supposed to be in the homes, but we would get permission to go to the homes and kind of do those things to kind of aid relatives as parents that didn't know how to get on meets and didn't really know how to be kind of more forceful with their kids to make sure that they log in and participate. So we did gain a lot of trust that way, oddly enough, because we were just like, hey, we're giving you a hotspot, do you even know how to turn it on? And they'd be like, yeah, come on in, and so we were welcomed pretty well. We have had a lot of people moving in and moving around in the district, and so we were really happy that oddly enough, COVID kind of helped us gain some trust.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have to applaud you all over the anchors out there that no one knows about, so thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you.
So we'll get the papers signed and get the order put on it, it'll be tomorrow,
Perfect.
and then we can get it to you all, okay?
That's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So we need a motion on that, please.
I'd offer a motion that we approve the YSC Senior Program Plan as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for the approval of the Frisky Continuation Program Plan as presented. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And again, thank you all very much. Okay. Ms. Kemp. We're on item number 5 on the agenda, which is finance report and financial statements.
Good afternoon.
Hello?
The first item I'd like to talk about was our financial statements. The first part of that is the bank refund or reconciliation. And you can see at the beginning of January, we had $13.1 million. And that is just about 2.5 to 3 million over what we had at the same time last year. The total receipts was down from last year, but still on target at 1.5 million. And then our disbursements, again, was up. A lot of that had to do with the fact that we have students in school this year, and we went the whole school year as opposed to not really knowing what our school year was going to be like. So at the end of the month, we're still about 1 million above what we were last year. Now, in the part 2 is the balance sheet. And on the recon, you can also see where each fund we take and we total, and we come up with the same cash balance as what we ended with for the month. So you can make those comparisons from the first page of the balance sheet and then the recon to kind of get an understanding of that. And the second part was our monthly report, and that has all the activities that actually occurred during the month, whether it was a revenue or a disbursement or just even journal vouching, where we decided that it was more appropriate to put an item in one account instead of where it had originally been placed. So that's what I have for the financial report.
Can I ask where we are? We were at 91% tax collection last month.
We are 94% of the bills have been collected and 97% of the revenues. So
Excellent.
now it's kind of a trickle in time.
Which is fine, once it
Yes.
trickles in, we'll take it,
Yes, we will.
definitely. It's been a very successful program for the district to be able to collect its own taxes.
It has.
And it was very controversial back in 2005, I guess, in that range. It's something only independent school districts can do, county districts cannot, the sheriff department collects. And at that time, we were paying the sheriff's department over $100,000 a year to collect our taxes. And so we figured out over 10 years, that's $1 million. And then we were able to go to the source to find out how they generated their tax statements. And once all that was done, and I have to give Patsy Clevenger and Bob Rowland the kudos for that, because they were the ones that did what the board asked them to do. I think a little reluctantly at first, but they jumped right on it and took care of business. So I look at how many years we've been doing that now, and how much money we've been saving by doing this ourselves, so, and I appreciate your work on that too.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Need a motion?
We need a motion, please.
I offer a motion for approval of the payment of invoices as presented.
Okay, we're actually on the financial statements.
I jumped down one, my
That's
bad.
all right.
Approval of the financial report as presented.
I second that.
So we have a motion and a second for the approval of the financial report as presented. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. Okay, Kim, go ahead. Finance, payment of invoices.
The payment of invoices, there's a few items that I would like to just point out. We were able to have the services and the concrete, at the bus garage, the concrete work for the terminals. That was paid for during the month. That was under Dawson Porky. And then we also have Mark's Electric, which is a GFI receptacles for the buses to be plugged up. At Tolliver, we had the gate installations. You may have noticed that. And those are things that were all on our maintenance and facilities plan. And also, we pay for the parking lot paving. Again, that was on our facility plan. So, and we had some of the work from train for the transportation management system that the bus drivers use for the GPS routes. We've had that paid for this month. So we've been pretty productive in all those disbursements that we've made.
Good. Can I ask, what kind of increases are we looking at, or have you noticed on our utilities? I mean, it's been pretty substantial, or?
It has been. I can actually run a report and get the exact dollar amount and send that to you if you
That'd be
like,
great.
or present it next month.
It'd be kind of nice to know. I mean, that's directly out of general funds, and it's always thousands of dollars a month, usually in the $30,000 or $40,000 range, that folks don't realize how much it takes to take care of our physical buildings. So, yeah, if you wouldn't mind doing that, it'd be great to get a report on that. Any other exciting things going on that we're coming up, as far as things that we were bidding on, or kind of work that you're aware of?
We're just trying to go through our facility plan and mark off things as we go. A lot of the items that was on that facility plan from last year, we've already completed, and we're moving on, looking ahead to see what we want to do in the future as well. So we talked about those issues.
I'll jump in there as well.
Sure.
Kim and I were very pleased on like the gate project right here at Tolliver. You know, previous superintendent and I'm assuming finance director put together this list of what it's going to cost to do these immediate facility needs, and then a little bit later and long term. And Kim and I were meeting over those this morning. It's like very satisfying to put a check mark whenever these have been completed. And so she and I and Ernest we've already started a list for next year's group to be done as well. So very pleased on the progress on every one of those, and I'm thankful that we've been in that financial position, and Kim's been a huge part of that. You'll see the purchasing manual and consent agenda, and she's done a lot of that work based off of some of these facility questions and so forth that we've had leading into it.
Does anybody else have any questions or concerns? And also, just to remind the board, if you see something in the reports, over the weekend that is of interest, or you would like to get an explanation, a lot of times it's really good just to either get a hold of the superintendent or get a hold of Kim directly and send an email or whatever, and just say, oh, I don't understand what that item was, and they will get back to us promptly. So I do appreciate your willingness to always take care of us.
Absolutely, full transparency.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the payment of invoices as presented.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the approval of the payment of the invoices. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ballard, I believe you're up.
Good evening.
Hello?
So what we have here is our Safe School Security Fund. That was our portion. The number you all see on there was our portion of the $18.2 million that the legislators allocated in order to fund Senate Bill 1, 2019, our Safe School Resiliency Act. It was a very restricted fund. Therefore, a lot of school districts were not accessing the money. At the end of the first year, they were being denied, or they weren't using the money because it was so restrictive. Like us, we had already done so many of those access risk mitigation components as far as blinds on doors, the locks in classrooms, cameras up front, security vestibule. So a lot of people, so what that happens with those types of fund, pandemic, they extended a year, and then they allow us to start being a little more creative on how we can use those. So how we looked at being creative is denying access visually into our buildings. And so we were looking at doing these window clean projects for all of our school district, the entire school district. So that money, the number you see the 3 bids. We have, it's just short of what they allocated for the lowest bid. And so we were looking at hoping to access that money as well as use the additional monies to start the project with the lowest bidder there. And that's the same company. If you've been to Eastern and with their window cleans, that's the same company that does most of those, and most of them in central western Kentucky as well.
So how long do you think this project will take? I'm just.
Well, the next step will be that we have to get, after board approval, I have to get approval at the state level. And he's been ready to move on it. The timeline, with it coming into spring, he's probably, there's other districts in the exact same play we are. I would imagine May, summer, probably the summertime at this point.
So we're only, the extra is just the 5,300, that's the extra.
Correct.
So that's all we needed, that's.
Yes.
To make it happen.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I will tell you that just for knowledge, I mean, we have a beautiful school at Hogsett, but there's so much accessibility visually. You can sit there. So it did absorb probably about half of this allocation. The rest of the schools were about even as well.
Some of the work's already been done in the hospital, right?
Well, that was actually not, that was more just visually, and that was based on a project, I think.
Okay, so something different than that.
Yes.
Okay.
These will be more where you can see low, like we have identified the areas where you can see into classrooms or the front door.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I see what you're saying. Works for me.
Okay, this is definitely good, and it's something, the safety of our kids and the staff.
Absolutely.
Nothing to vote on, just a report.
No, so,
We need to have a motion, please.
I'll offer a motion for approval of the bid from the graphic for athletics for $56,955 for window cleans for all buildings.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the approval of the graphics for athletics. I can't read this. For $56,000, $955 for window clean. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Ron, thank you for your work on that. All right, down the consent agenda. Have you all had a chance to study all this? Okay, any questions on anything? Okay. I do, and we're not going to go through it, but I do believe the huge thing that was accomplished was the purchasing manual. You know, that was one of the first things Dr. Thomas talked about when he got here. And so that has been taken care of, and it just spells out exactly how we're supposed to do things. It's the process. So anyway.
Say thanks to Kim Hudson.
Yes, thank you, Kim. It's wonderful. So all those, we need a motion on the consent agenda items.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda items as they are presented.
Second.
Do we have a motion and second for the approval of the consent agenda items as submitted? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right. We are now down to item 7, and those patiently waiting to talk to us, Norma Hopkins, you have the floor.
As he said, my name is Norma Hopkins, and I'm the library technology teacher at Hogsett, and I'm also the acting president of Danville Education Association. I, along with some of my colleagues, are here to support our classified personnel asking for a living wage that is comparable to the wages in the surrounding community. We realize that the budget isn't on the agenda tonight, but we want to plan ahead for that, for when that budget talk occurs. We think that's really important. As Dr. Cleveland mentioned, and the Family Resource Center classified personnel mentioned, those relationships with students are very important, and some of our classified staff are the ones that meet them at the very, very beginning, and those relationships are just so important. For example, one of the teachers asked me the other day as a librarian to give her kindergartner some extra books because the bus monitor read with the kindergartner on the bus. That's not in that person's job description. And that person certainly isn't paid to do that, but she wanted to make that relationship with that student. All of our classified staff have impacts on students, just like I just talked about, and like the Family Resource Center ladies just talked about how important those impacts are for our students. In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, which was on the Hogsett marquee in January, it says, "The time is always right to do what is right." I, along with the teaching staff at Hogsett, urge the school board to consider a significant raise for all the support classified staff in 2022, starting in 2022 to 2023, so we can continue to have a great impact on our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. We're going to go into executive session, so we need a motion, please.
I make a motion to go to executive session in accordance with KRS 61.810, personnel.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the executive session. This has to do with hiring our superintendent, so when we have these discussions, it's always in closed session. So all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. If anybody needs to